can't harm the whole thing. I failed here. I was too proud. I'm a big proponent of like focusing on the bottleneck. You attract people who want to do easy, boring stuff. I thought I knew everything.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Breakout CEO podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Holman. I'm with a small law firm called Intellectual Strategies. And since I can't tell you all my clients' secrets, I invite guests out who are running businesses, and we have frank discussions about some of the things they're doing in their businesses. Because I know that just seeing CEOs at different levels, there's a lot to process. And a lot of times it feels like you're doing things on your own. But I know you're not, because I've seen those things going on behind closed doors. And so I'm so grateful to guests who come on the show to share some of their experiences and insights and how they, not only ran into problems, but overcame those problems. So it's a great venue. And today we've got a great guest joining us, Drew Allen. Drew, thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We had some fun short discussion on the icebreaker questions beforehand. So if anybody listening to this full episode wants to go back and hear those, go look at our LinkedIn page and you can see those icebreaker questions on there and get to know Drew a little bit more. Maybe call it outside of work, if we will. So, well, Drew, you run a company called I just renamed your company. Is that okay?
Grace. The marketing team's not going to like that.
Grace Technologies. So I tried to say something else, but I want to get into where you've been, how you've built that up, and some of the things you've run into along the way. So I think that's going to be really interesting for the audience. Before that, though, I want to do a little bit of follow up because I am intrigued now by some of the stuff that we just talked about. Before starting this full recording here, if that's okay.
No, go for it.
Okay. You mentioned trekking, and you mentioned the Camino de Santiago, right? And I think I might have cut you off when you were saying others. Where have you done this trekking at?
So Camino de Santiago, we've done the Salcante. Usually, I've done additional stuff in Colorado, but always looking for various treks to do. I know I have another CEO buddy who's doing a big long one in Switzerland this summer. I'm not going to be able to join him, but I found that it is quite the experience and incredibly difficult. On the Camino, we were going about 25 miles a day, which was brutal. And, there's... And
that's like, isn't that like the full is like 800 kilometers?
Oh, we did not do the full. I am not that
But you
good.
But still, there's endless walking. You walk as long as you want to, pretty much, right?
Yeah. So we walked from Porto. So we walked from Porto to Santiago in northern Spain. And, on the back half of that trip, it was a monsoon. It doesn't matter how waterproof your boots are. If they say that there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just bad gear. I don't think when you're going through, you're walking up a mountain trail and it's actually a creek. I just don't think you're like totally prepared, I don't think you're totally prepared for that. It was really, really challenging though. That was my first one. And doing the extent of what we were doing per day was just way difficult. And, and so you start off with your buddies, right? And, kind of by the end of day one, you've lost, you've kind of burned through all the topics that you needed to catch up with them on. Right. So by day two.
Yeah. Because walking 25 miles, if you're walking, you're going, call it 3 miles an hour, maybe slower, depending on the weather conditions. That's a lot of walking and talking.
Yeah, a lot of talking. And so, so eventually you just kind of get alone with your thoughts, right? And you start kind of examining your life. And, there's some beauty to putting your body into pain and suffering to really like reveal your heart, define your intentions, understand the plan of kind of where you want to go. And, my mom had a lot of health issues. She ended up passing away from ovarian cancer about 2 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
And so I did the trek in the fall before she passed away. And at that point, I can't remember if she was in remission or not, but this had been a recurring thing for like the last 13 years. Yeah. And so I was dealing with a lot of that. And at the time, I wasn't quite happy with maybe the level of fatherhood that I was providing. And, my marriage was fine, but not great. And so, as you're just reflecting on all these things and the business was kind of in a tough position and, and so you're just walking and you're chewing on these issues and you're going, okay, well, what do I have to change? You're only in control of what you can control.
Right.
And, you're sitting there and you're putting your body through misery, and you realize, you're responsible for taking that next step forward. And, and I think that really translates into business and life, especially when you don't feel like it. Hey, it's just one more step, and just continuing to have that perseverance to move forward. That idea that, hey, you've got a community of people there kind of rooting you on, because the Camino is kind of a special place where everyone's super friendly and, more than willing to support you and give you stuff you need.
Right.
And share a beer with you at the end of the day. And it's a really cool thing. I got onto this through one of my friends in Hong Kong. And then there's a guy actually that I used to live with in Hong Kong in our housing development.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done like all the treks you can think of. He's done the coast to coast in the UK. He's done the Via Francigena all the way from the coast of France all the way to Rome.
Really?
And it's just like the breakthroughs that he's really had in his life and the peace and tranquility that I think he brings to life post those trips is really special.
Yeah. Have you done any? I mean, this is amazing, and I'm really glad you're sharing it. And there are, not to be trite, there are all sorts of parallels between these types of trekking experiences and business, for sure. Have you done? Is it mostly these kind of point to point things that you've done? Have you done it? Have you done anything like Everest Base Camp or some of those mountainous treks?
I've done some mountainous treks in Colorado, but I've not done Everest Base Camp. I think I prefer the altitude under 10,000 feet. It is oxygen is really nice. In fact, actually on the Salcantay trek, we had to spend a night up at 11,500 feet. And it was rough. I mean, sleeping at that elevation, and then having, you don't sleep. I mean, your heart's just beating so fast, you can't sleep.
Yeah.
But being up at that elevation, trying to sleep and then go for a massive trek the next day is really, really challenging. It would have been probably better if we wouldn't have slept at elevation and just gotten over the mountain. Because on the other side, I think we got down to like 8,500 or something, which is a little bit more doable.
Minimize the time at elevation. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, what a great experience. And that sounds like that's paired up with, or maybe related to the fact that you travel so much. You mentioned Hong Kong, you mentioned Asia before when we were talking, and taking your family over to Asia for a trip. And where does travel play into kind of your, I don't want to say your work schedule, because travel is never really convenient, but where does travel play into your mindset and the way you think about life and business? Just a quick note about our guests. I host the Breakout CEO podcast to share behind the scenes insights from scaling businesses. As an attorney, I see the real challenges leaders face long before success becomes public. But client stories have to stay confidential. So we invite guest CEOs to share their own moments of struggle and success. I'm so grateful to our guests and my team at Intellectual Strategies for making this show possible. Now, let's get back to the show.
My dad started taking me to China when I was 13. And that just opened up an entire world for me. And just ever since those trips, all I can remember is the fact that I wanted to lead a life of adventure. And so if I think about kind of some of my own personal core values, freedom and adventure and, taking responsibility and things like this, I think, exploring the world has always been a part of that adventure. And my wife is from Brazil. So my kids are dual citizens. We just have a passion for exploration and trying new things. And I've always found in life that saying yes to things, I know it's very fashionable to like say no, right? like I think a lot of people give this advice, right. Oh, you got to say no more, Right. I've always found that saying yes leads to the most incredible experiences that you never knew existed. And especially if you don't become too analytical about it. And so I usually, if there's an adventure that's getting presented, I'm usually first one to say, yeah, let's do it. And I think that's also important in business though. I think you want to do something that seems adventurous to you. Mm-hmm. So if you're an entrepreneur, one of the things that really defines an entrepreneurial led business as opposed to a publicly traded corporation or some, mega corp is the fact that you get to define your own adventure.
Yeah.
And hopefully you find a tribe of people between your customers and your team members who are excited to join you on that journey. And oftentimes it's easier to do the most exciting thing than to do the boring, safe thing, because the type of people that come into your organization that want to do something exciting and worthwhile are often the best people that give you a higher hit rate or chance of success, right? Like if you just do easy, boring stuff, what kind of people do you attract into the organization? You attract people who want to do easy, boring stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. So you get you get an organization of average. It sounds like, you get the people who aren't, maybe there are other issues with some of the extremes in, from an HR perspective, but I don't want to go there for make it sound legal, but you have it's certainly different culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell this when you're in other founder led businesses that have a really distinct personality, and it's like there's a tribe of people around them with very similar personalities of go-gettingness or whatever, right? We do a lot of work with SpaceX and Tesla and Boring Company. All of these people are like some at least mini version of Elon, right? Like at heart, like just absolutely like wild thinkers and extraordinary talent and engineer. I think Mark Andreessen sums it up best. When you step into SpaceX, you step into this bizarre land of complete competence. Like everyone is like highly competent and like knows their stuff. And so I think it's incumbent on entrepreneurs to shape the business and the identity of the business about something that, is really you at your core, and about, that's aspirational and exciting and adventurous. Yeah,
man. I feel like we just wrapped up an episode with all this stuff. We haven't even talked about your business yet, but this is fantastic. I love how I really do sincerely love how, you're taking these topics about trekking and travel and they apply back to life, they apply back to business, and, and maybe that's not much of a surprise if you're an entrepreneur at heart, like everything relates back to life and business, right? At some level. So, but I love it. You're clearly a very thoughtful person and looking to both explore and improve. And I love that. And the rest of this episode is going to be awesome to talk about how you've done that in your business.
And I love to surround myself with curious people. I think I don't know if I was born with the gift or my dad instilled it in me, but we were always asking questions about how things work or why are things so. And I think that just that innate curiosity is so important in entrepreneurship and life and creativity and innovation. It's like it all starts kind of with a why question, and really curious, why does that person operate that way? And if you can kind of come at curiosity with a non-judgmental angle and really try to understand, I read a lot. I read a lot because I'm curious. And because I'm curious, I get to learn more and I get to share more and I get to impact more people. And I think, figure out what really piques your curiosity and lead into that is a critical item in just developing yourself.
Yeah. You've brought up your dad a few times now. I'm curious, what did he do? And, cause it sounds like a lot of this has, I don't know, rubbed off, or, you've taken away some positive traits from what he's done. What was your dad into?
So my dad was, I think he's still a bigger risk taker than I am, to be honest.
Oh yeah. As in skydiving type risk or business risk?
No, like business risk. He left Rockwell Automation, so a Fortune 100 business, I think, when I was 6 months old, and started up his own business. Can you imagine going to your wife with a 6-month-old at the house and being like, oh, hey, I quit my super safe corporate job and I'm going to start up a system integration business in Davenport, Iowa. It just doesn't it doesn't.
Wait, did they have to move too?
No, actually. So my dad grew up in Pasadena, California.
Okay.
He met my mom in Milwaukee on the sales training program. And then they got married, moved to Portland, Maine. And a job opportunity came up because he kind of was an expert on this one kind of new piece of technology, and the largest customer for that piece of technology was in the Quad Cities, and so he settled in Davenport. My mom was happy to be a little bit closer to Milwaukee and see her family a little bit more frequently. We did a lot of trips to Milwaukee, a lot of driving by Rockford on the way up, but Milwaukee's a great town, kind of my second home.
Awesome. But he's like, hey, we're going to, baby's doing well. You look like you've recovered pretty well. I think I'm going to start a new business.
Yeah. And now my dad also, it wasn't the first business he had started. Okay. He did, he put himself through college, making cabinets and doing that, and would hire all kind of his buddies. So he was like really a carpenter up until he got his first quote unquote real job. Right. And then he continued to just take risks, eventually sold off that system integration business, took our product side of the business, continued to expand it, try new products. Not everything worked. He just is like one that just keeps on doubling down his risk tolerance. It just seems like there's never too big of a risk for if he can afford to take it, he takes it.
Well, were you drawn to this? Is this something did you work with your dad at a time, or was this something where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to this looks really interesting, but not my style.
Actually, quite the contrary. I walked. So I took a little bit of a non-traditional route. I left high school at 16 and I started college at 16. Okay. And so I graduated at 19 and I walked into my dad's office kind of close to graduation. And I go, hey, Dad, what you built here is really great, but it's way too boring for a 20 something. And I promptly left for Hong Kong and landed in Hong Kong 3 weeks before my 20th birthday. And
just by yourself?
With my wife. I got married very young because we were on vacation and I proposed. I proposed in December. We went on vacation. Then I decided I should call my attorney and see how the green card mechanics work. And he informed me that we got engaged December 10th. And he informed me we needed to get married before March 4th. So no baby or anything, but it was with the visa expirations, or otherwise she was going to have to go back to Brazil to get the fiance visa and yada, yada, yada. And we're like, okay, let's do it. So we did it. Again, a risk, I guess I take my own fair share of risks. But yeah, we moved to Hong Kong and eventually took a position with 3M there doing business development for China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Wow. And then, it was what was really cool about that experience, besides all the travel and learning the business skills, was I got to make it on my own.
Yeah.
When you have a family business, there's this like family business curse. All the success I'll ever have is because of my dad, and all of the failure is my own fault. Right.
Yeah. Whatever was working is not working now. And you caused that.
Right. It's all good is someone else's success and all bad is my failure. And so it was just good to be able to do that in Hong Kong and know, hey, I can make it on my own. And not that I was perfect and not everything was super easy. But we went from living in a 450 square foot apartment, to, in 3 years being able to go on trips and live comfortably. And when I'm 23, it was a great experience. And I learned all sorts of business lessons as well. I mean,
well, Hong Kong's full of all sorts of businesses and people coming from I love Hong Kong. I've been there, maybe 6 or 8 times, and it's just one of my favorite places, partly because it's so, it's pretty foreign, but not all the way foreign. And it's just got such a mix of everything going on all at once.
Well, and when I was there from 2010 to 2013. And so if you really talk to people, that was the golden zone of Hong Kong, right? It was golden time. Yeah. And it was before the protests started and before all the crackdowns and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, and so all of the world's best companies were sending their best people to Hong Kong, and the expat community in Hong Kong is large, but still very small. It's like a small town. Yeah. And so you get to meet these incredible people and just open your horizons of all sorts of new ideas and concepts. And we don't have private equity as an investor or anything, but I learned all about private equity models and how they work. And I would have never learned that in Iowa. And so
Yeah.
it was really, really cool to be able to brush shoulders with, brush elbows with all sorts of interesting folks and learn from them. And have people take me under their wing and give me advice in my career and show me new ways of doing things.
That's fantastic. And you're right. I think it has changed a little bit since the protest. That was like 2019 or so, right? When everything started to kind of shift over there. What were the major milestones from Hong Kong and working at 3M with your newer wife and your newer baby? Did you have a baby over there, or am I just making
no, we didn't have babies over there.
So kept it simple. So what were the major milestones or kind of stopping points from your journey in Hong Kong to where you are today with Grace Technologies?
So I've shared this one before. So my mom got sick, which kind of shortened, our stay in Hong Kong. It was time to move back home into the family business. Mm-hmm. Right. And we moved back home. We're living with my parents, and while we're getting a house remodeled, which is like the worst thing ever. So we're doing this. I'm under a lot of stress to try to perform, not because my dad's putting me under stress, but because I put it on myself. I didn't have any of those skill sets, those soft skill sets, to be able to really manage the conflict well. We didn't have the family business structures in place to be able to do that, and so I'm hard charging and, think I know it all. And I end up getting an opportunity with a very, very large customer in the consumer packaged goods space. And we come up with this new product, right? And I'm convinced that this product is like the bee's knees. This is going to sell like hotcakes.
Pause everything. We got to put an investment into this product line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I take about, 9 to 12 months of engineering time. Without the engineering investment, all in, probably with inventory, all the tooling, the certifications, we're at $400,000, $500,000, right? And I'm like 25.
Yeah. And your dad's running the business. He's just like, okay, Drew, just take this and let's see where it goes.
My dad, he could have stepped in. But one, he's a risk taker. And I also think he knows the value of me learning my own lessons. And so anyways, I go ahead and
that was foreshadowing, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I go ahead and I launch the product, and guess what? Crickets. Absolute crickets. In fact, the customer that I developed it with, they went through some sort of reorganization, and there was approvals that didn't happen. And so even they didn't buy it. Really? And so I'm stuck with all this inventory, as with all this egg on my face. Right. And everything, and so I'm just so stressed out. The team's mad with me. I'm mad with the team. I'm angry at the salespeople not selling the product. And I'm like, eventually I just step back and I'm like, what did I miss?
Yeah.
Right. Like, not what did everyone else do wrong? What did I, Drew, do wrong?
Yeah.
Right. So I started looking at, okay, first, I didn't have the right engineering team in place to be able to quickly iterate on new products.
You're doing full scale development rather than validation.
Right. So we had to use some outside firm to be able to help develop the thing, which meant that we weren't able to, there wasn't as many prototype iterations, and we could have gotten a lot more product feedback earlier on that maybe would have been able to get us to change things. Second thing is, I refused to take it to other customers to validate the idea.
Okay.
Right. I think I was afraid. that they weren't that they weren't going to see the value in it, because maybe I had some grandiose idea of, the iPhone, of if you ask, Henry Ford says, if you ask what people want, they would tell you a faster buggy, a faster horse.
Faster horse. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so I just completely shortchanged that step.
Mhm.
And I probably could have avoided, if I would have gone to just even 10 customers and I would have saw that they didn't have any interest in it,
At least create some pause. Yeah.
It would have created some pause or a way for me to adjust down the inventory orders or take less risk or do something, right? And so that was a big humbling experience of like, wow, I don't know what I'm doing, and I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people maybe get an experience like that, but for me, it was so crystal clear.
Yeah.
That it was like, no, I failed here. I was too proud, and I should have followed what really best processes were, best practices for new product creation, and I just didn't. I thought I knew everything, and so that humbling really took a toll on me, and I don't think I really came out of that like experience for probably about 9 or 12 months later before I was able to really like reflect, learn the lessons, change my mindset, and become a little bit more teachable.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that was one of the kind of those defining moments in my career where it was like, it was just so you blew $400,000, like you blew a house
and 18 months or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I got, by the way, because we have 9 to 12 month sales cycles and obviously development cycles, that meant that the sales kind of piece of things sucked for the next 2 years. So I got to live with that. Not just past that 9 to 12 months. I got to live with that for like 2 additional years before we could get other new products out to be able to take the sales place.
Because the pipeline. Oh man. It reminds me I'm going to call it a smaller scale only because I don't think the numbers were quite as big, but I had a team come to me in maybe 2009 and they said, hey, we're going to develop this product. I don't even remember what the original product was. They went and pitched it to a hospital. The hospital came back and said, yeah, we're not going to buy that, but we really like your team. Would you mind developing this other product that one of our doctors made in the labs, and he uses it, with his own neonatal patients, and we'd love to see it commercialized. And we're like, oh, that sounds good. Built-in demand. The hospital wants us to make it. The hospital turned around and buy it. And so I helped him with some of the legal side of that. And all of this, and we had a great team and it was going really well. And we went back and we said, okay, we've made it. We've got the chemistry down and we've got everything. We've got the packaging, like everything's done. We're ready to take your PO. And they go, oh, well, yeah. I mean, you have to talk to the purchasing department for that. We're the legal department. And so we're like, okay, well, just put us in touch with purchasing. And we go to purchasing and purchasing says, oh, we're not buying that. And we're like, wait a second. Because if you look at it from one perspective, you say, well, this feels like a bait and switch. Like you guys wanted this and now you're not doing it. And then if you stop, like you mentioned, and you reflect on it, which one of our founders, really reflected on it, to the point that he now is a university professor teaching business strategy classes. And he says, Jeff, this is like the classic story that I tell everyone of what not to do, because we missed some certain things, right? Like we made assumptions as to what was going to work and who would buy and how much, and all these things, without even asking the questions of the people that were available to us all along. So
recently had also a similar experience, but we caught it. So like learnings, hello.
Exactly.
So we were talking with a large train customer.
Okay.
And they were asking for some kind of custom product development. And we have this like hour and a half call with them, and they want us to go off and do this development and da 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 da. And towards the end of the call, actually my dad was on the call, and he goes, "Yeah, so do you guys have budget for this?" And they go, "Oh no, we just really like the idea.
We want you guys to pay for the development."
Right. And it just,
you'll love it. It's gonna be awesome. Just let us know when you finish paying for it, huh?
Right. And so, I think it's always tricky to work with doing kind of custom development for other companies. But I would recommend, making sure they have budget, making sure that you're talking to the people who can actually make the purchase decision. If you're making it for them, get some like pre-commitment pre-orders. It's really, really helpful if you can do that before investing in all of your R&D.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Wild story. So how did that, so that was early on when you had returned. Where have you gone from that point?
Yeah. So I took over as CEO in January of 21. I figured nothing could be as bad as 2020. So it was a good time to take over.
Was it truly like a low, I mean, did the business have hard times through 2020 in the sense that, became a natural transition point for you guys?
I think the business, I mean, in April of 2020, our business was down about 30% month on month. And I think that's about as bad as it, I think total year, we ended down 15% probably. So all in all, it could have been a lot worse, right? And then there was the PPP money that came in, but there was a lot of other stuff going on in the company at that time. We were trying to hire a engineering team. We made some bad hires that ended up, costing us. There was all of just the personal turmoil and all of the rigmarole of trying to adjust to this new virus and all of the, all the new regulations and people freaking out. It was just this like incredibly chaotic time. It felt like, oh, the business is actually okay. And it turns out that, oftentimes in life, the Stoics say that, the obstacle is the way. Fortunately we were able to do some acquisitions towards the tail end of 2020 because the sales volumes dipped, which actually gave us the ability to purchase certain companies in a much more financially beneficial way.
Yeah.
So we came out of all that chaos and my mom's health was back being on the table. And so, and my dad at that point, he kind of looked at me and our COO at the time during COVID, and he goes, "Hey, look, I lived through, the .com bust, 2008, 2009, and this is your guys' crisis. So have fun," and kind of, signed off. And so, yeah, I took over in 2021.
What did the team look like at that point?
So thin senior leadership team, not a lot of experience.
Really? A lot of it was your dad carrying, he was the kind of the linchpin of the system.
Yeah. Even the people that we had in the positions were definitely not going to be the right people to carry the business forward. And so,
why do you say that?
Our sales leadership was not strong at the time. Even our operation, I had to let go of our COO within 3 months of me taking over. Even my CTO, who's still with us today, we were still in an immature kind of engineering management structure discussion. I mean, I didn't have the team. And so then I am kind of forced with like trying to grow the business with the team I have as I'm trying to get people slotted in. My board is telling me, that I got to step up the team members and trying to attract the right talent to a small business that, while I have had big aspirations, we didn't have the results yet. And it was just kind of a super stressful period to get that team. And it wasn't until about the late second year or early third year that I felt like, oh, I've got a good team in place. Like, I know that if I put things in front of them, I know that they can execute them. And I think that I think that a lot of people really underestimate the team, how important your team capacity is and the leadership in those roles. And it's really, really hard to depart those team members.
Yeah.
If especially if you came up before being CEO and you worked with these people and they were your colleagues. And so it's really hard because you feel like you owe them something.
Yeah. We talked earlier about building the right teams, the culture of teams, finding the right players. Everybody at Tesla is like a mini Elon Musk or whatever, right? And were you conscious of kind of that philosophy as you were rebuilding? Like, you knew who you were looking for, or did you just know that or was it more of the performance isn't happening the way I think I want it to, so I got to make a change, but where do I turn?
One, it was making a decision that, so there was a realization I had that I'm responsible for the outcomes here, and those outcomes are responsible for the success of all of the families and the team members involved in the business. And so I have to protect that at all costs. And so I had to kind of separate that thought from like letting go of and causing like one person harm. Right. And it was like, I can't harm the whole thing. It's much better to let one person go to keep this thing safe than to, continue to harm this and put everyone in jeopardy by having the wrong leader or the wrong employee on the boat. Right. And so,
yeah. And when you say harm, does that mean, sorry to interrupt that, but like when you say harm, sometimes there's people who actually do bad things in the company. A lot of times, though, I think there are teams where you just know that the level of performance is not what it needs to be, and maintaining the same, call it lower level of performance. Is that the type of harm you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, it's usually not so.
It's not blatant, right?
Yeah, it's not usually blatant. Actually, the blatant stuff is the easiest stuff to let people go for. It's the person who's like the good dude who's trying his best, but it's just the best is just not what the expectation is.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the hard ones to let go. So it was like, okay, there's that piece. Second, we're going to put a stake in the ground of an excellence level of performance. Right. Okay. We want to have a high growth business, and we're going to optimize for people who want to be involved in a high growth business. And we want to be a rocket ship, because ultimately, if you have more energy, if you're coming out with new products, it's just better to have people who are energized by that vision, because you attract much, much better people. And so, we put the stake in the ground and we started to attract that type of talent. Yeah. And every time that we would hire someone, we kind of like step it up a little bit and then step it up a little bit and step it up a little bit. And now, really, really incredibly happy with where the team's at. But that took years. And it starts at the leadership team, but then it trickles down to all the rest of the organization, right? You've got to get, your engineering teams on board, your production teams on board. You got to get your sales and your BDs on board. You got to get your customer service team. I mean, when you're rolling through a transformation, a lot of the people that you selected, in the past pre-transformation would now have to re-enter through a different selection criteria, if that makes sense. Right. And so if those people can't make the selection criteria today, then they're not going to be able to kind of not be able to go through the transformation. And so I think it's pretty typical when you're transforming a business that you're gonna lose a relatively high percentage of your individuals. And I think you need to be damn sure that before you embark on that transformation journey, that is what you're prepared to do. I'm a big proponent of making sure that why you're making the choice, and knowing that you made that choice and that this is part of that choice. Some people just act like, oh, I'm going to make a choice, and it's not on me. Like, this stuff now life is happening to me. Like, I didn't sign up for this. And it's like, no, if you make this transformation choice, this is what you're signing up for.
You sign up for the action and the consequences of the action, right? Hey, I'm really curious. Did you have a team around you to help with this, or was this something? So it wasn't something where you went into this saying, "Oh my gosh, I kind of feel like I'm surrounded by people that aren't the right people, and I'm in actuality alone in in the purpose that you didn't go through that type of thing where you felt like you were the one having to carry this burden to make the full transition. Who was around you?
Yeah. So I have 3 independent groups that have all played a role in this. Mm-hmm. Number one are board of directors. So I have an outside fiduciary. I'm the majority owner, family owned business, but I hired a fiduciary board of directors to be able to push me and refine my ideas and my concepts. And they're highly qualified.
So these aren't like VC investors or outside. These are just hired or engaged. We'll call them engaged, whether they're paid or not. They're engaged to help you perceive how the business is doing and implement these types of changes.
Yep, and we pay them. And actively recruit for the best that we can get.
Yeah.
Second is I have I joined YPO right after I became CEO in 2021. And with YPO, there always comes a forum. And so we meet on a monthly basis. And so I've got let's call them my own personal board of directors, but they know everything about me and the business, and they speak into my life and challenge me. And really, help me through any sort of these difficult times and choices, because we all come from things with different experiences, and we've all had different experiences. And so we get to share from that. Highly recommend, if your business qualifies, get into YPO. I'm currently the learning officer, so I'm planning all the stuff for next year.
Awesome.
So that's been a huge part of my life, and the connections I made through YPO, not just in my forum, but in my chapter and on the international level, is, I can literally put out a post with some problem I'm having, and I'll have 5 people answer me in 5 minutes. Hey, this happened to me last year. Would love to hop on the phone call and let you know what happened. Yeah. So that's an incredible community, right? So community is kind of number 2. Number 3 is I also hired an executive coaching team. And so we've got I started off with looking for an executive coach actually for my CTO. Mm-hmm. And then as I got into the process, I said, well, I think I need a coach. And I think, why is it just going to be me and my CTO with the coach? I should have the whole leadership team coached. Yeah. And so we make a substantial investment every year into leadership coaching, yearly offsites with personal development. I'm always willing to send people onto things that I think are going to develop them. I sent our sales director off to one of Jocko's programs recently, and so he was getting to wake up at 4:30 and go do PT with them. And those, I really think that those have been 3 major keys in kind of our development as a company and me as a leader.
Yeah. And so those helped you with perspectives and approaches and maybe even some language at times to address this whole leadership change. Interesting though that, that you're able to go outside the business to help. I always find this interesting, right? You go outside the business to find the help that you need inside the business, because it's hard sometimes to go inside the business to the people who are already so close around you that you would hope to be able to rely on, but in some cases they're just not the right fit, right? Or the issues are kind of not their issues, and so
right, and they're seeing it from their own perspective inside, right? And if they knew how to have solved the problem, like if they had already seen the problem solved, they would have let you know. Right.
Yeah.
It's like it wouldn't be a problem that's bubbling up. But usually when you have a problem that's you can't resolve in your company, it's because no one's had experience dealing with that problem yet.
It's the unknown because of the people that you've got on your team, whereas the people outside have seen it and they're like, well, no, that's not an unknown. That's a known. Your team just isn't qualified or hasn't seen that issue before.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. What was kind of the biggest obstacle as you transitioned your team? Because I think this is an issue that a lot of companies go through at some stage. Either it's because performance has faltered, or the markets have shifted, or different call it investors or influential people in the business have come in and said, hey, we got to shake this up. Or in your case, maybe part of it is transition. Succession transitions happen. When you did this, was it just generally the issue was, hey, we got to do it right? Or were there any specific obstacles that you ran into? And if so, how did you manage those?
Really hard to find we run a really sophisticated sales operation. Mm-hmm. And I came up through the sales operation, and I put in kind of that level of sophistication, and it was one of the most challenging pieces to get right was actually hiring people to manage that, and partly because salespeople are really good at interviewing. Mm-hmm. Right. And so just because they're good at interviewing does not mean that they're going to be, a great sales leader.
Yeah. Execution.
And at the time, we didn't have the internal folks mature enough to be able to take over the sales leadership. And so we went to kind of some outside parties, and it just did not work for a lack of attention to detail, lack of, enforcing kind of the sales process or knowing how to use the tools, an understanding of the complexity of our sales environment. There was just a lot of, and so I ended up promoting someone internally to take over that, which has now been a great move, but we're continuing to kind of, bolster his leadership ability as well. So that
hence one was the coaching team for all of the leaders.
Right. And so that was one of the strongest challenges. Then building out a engineering team here in Davenport, especially electrical engineering and firmware, was incredibly challenging. And so what would happen is as we have projects come on and we need engineering talent, well, my CTO would continue to drop in as an individual contributor, and he was just getting buried. And his anxiety was through the roof, which, and we just weren't able to hire, especially in 21 and 22. It was really, really hard to get technical talent. And so that just led to a ton of stress, and, missed project deadlines and things like that. And so, that's part of our move to Austin is we want to be able to have a secondary talent hub for engineering and sales talent down there. And, we're going to continue to produce here in Iowa, and we'll continue to hire in both locations. But ultimately we'll probably have, two kind of engineering centers and sales areas. So those were like the two biggest ones that took the most amount of effort, and just felt like for ages we weren't getting right.
Yeah.
And it was like just having that vision of like, okay, we're going to get there. And then eventually a piece falls in, one piece falls into place, and then the next piece. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh,
what was one of those pieces, for example, with one of these two, like how did you like view the problem from a different angle after one of your, thinking walks, or did you or was it just a matter of timing? You had to wait until the right thing came along and then it worked.
We aggressively recruited.
Okay.
We aggressively recruited in the engineering piece, and then we also aggressively expand our internship program at Iowa State, which gave us a lot of way more talented than you would think college students.
Yeah,
because the type of people that we want to attract into the engineering environment are creators, are people who they don't want to go work at the big company and only work on this like one little finite little piece of something, right? We want someone who wants to come work on a whole product. And so these people came in with a lot of energy, and we've had some, and so while the team was incredibly junior, they were actually really good. And then we got a couple senior leaders hired as well in the engineering department that just changed the game. And that was, through really aggressive recruiting. And so I'm a big proponent of like focusing on the bottleneck. And at that point in the company's history, the bottleneck was engineering development, right? And why was engineering development bottleneck? Because my engineering recruiting sucked.
Yeah.
Right. So I put really a ton of energy into engineering recruiting to get that unlocked so that we had the right products to be able to go out and sell and be able to blitz the market. And then, obviously then sales kind of became the bottleneck. And so really focusing in on the talent, the talent there and the leadership, and making sure that, we're running the right kind of channel programs and sales processes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, sales is always a work in progress, but we're in a much better position than we used to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's exciting to come up with solutions for these types of things and see the incremental steps as you go. Where do you think that these types of moves are going to put your company in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so we have been aggressively expanding into the data center space, and the data center space is probably multiples of our existing business.
Yeah.
And so, in the next 3 years, I put the challenge out to the team. We want to hit $100 million. And, $100 million, though, is a result. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, we're after zero harm, zero downtime in facilities. And we think if we enable that and really get our technology deployed at a lot of places, that we can, that $100 million is an easy result of us meeting our goals on enabling zero harm and zero downtime across industrial and data center facilities.
Interesting. And with that field growing so fast as it is, that's a real positive for the goal too.
Yeah. I mean, and the safety issues are real. And so at our company, it's really cool that we actually save people's lives. Like not every company can say that.
What do you mean by that?
So our products, some of our main product lines actually prevent people from getting electrocuted or by getting kind of blown apart by a thing called arc flash. So arc flash is a electrical explosion, with liquid plasma and shrapnel. And I mean, it's like a bomb goes off in a substation or switchgear as people are working in there. And so we create solutions that keep people away from all that harm and hazard.
Wow. So there's real direct impact there in addition to running the business and doing all the other things.
Yeah. And so it's we want people to go home at the end of the day. And so it's really easy to keep a team energized when you have that as your guiding star of hey, these devices get installed, risk goes down, people go home at the end of the day. Everyone's behind that.
That's fantastic. Well, Drew, this has been really interesting talking with you. I'm taking away a bunch of nuggets of insights for myself, and I'm sure our audience is doing the same thing. What would you say you're leaning into to achieve that $100 billion goal over the next, 3 to 5 years or whatever timeline that I think you said 3 years maybe, but what are you leaning into as a leader that other people might want to think about in their own businesses?
Ownership. I want to have people empowered and feel like they own this thing. I think Jocko's book is fantastic kind of on that subject. Really what does it mean to take ownership? It means no, this is my baby and I'm going to do everything. I'm going to bleed to make sure that this thing goes well. And having a team that operates with extreme ownership, I think is really rare and unique. And I've been really impressed with how the team has taken it. And when people take ownership of things, they take it a lot further than you would have ever taken it yourself. Right. Because you're always, if you're sitting in my seat, you've always got 12 different priorities underneath you. Right. And so I can't devote all the time that one person could to that one priorities. But if I can get one person to devote their full-time focus to one priority, ultimately it's a lot better than a 12th of my focus and attention span.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's really the trick in leadership. I also we have been in a really, really busy season of product development. And so we've got a lot of new product development projects that have either wrapped earlier this year or are going to wrap by the fall. And so it's great because we got all this new product coming out and, we're going out and selling it and it's scaling and that's really cool. But we actually get to, for the first time, kind of sit down with an empty sheet of paper and be how do we want to create the future? What's the future that we want to create? What is the product offerings? We have amazing engineering teams that want to work on stuff. What excites them to work on?
Yeah.
And we haven't had that moment for a large number of years. And, so I really enjoy these long form kind of, I wouldn't call them brainstorming ideas. I would call them engineering sessions. Let's engineer a solution together. And that's been really, really fun. And I think we're going to have some cool stuff coming out, not this year from that, but probably next year that will really set us on a different growth trajectory.
Oh, that's cool. Fun times ahead. That's what that sounds like to me.
Yeah, no, it's always, you got to keep it interesting. Keep it interesting. Keep it fun.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show, sharing your experiences and insights. It really has been a pleasure listening to the stuff you've shared. I'm sure there's many other stories behind those too.
More than I wish to talk.
Maybe another episode.
Absolutely.
Well, and thanks to our audience out there listening to this episode. We're always glad that you listen, that you come and hear what's being shared, and hope you can take away some things to apply to your own businesses and understand that you're not alone in the journey. You're just maybe at a different stage than somebody else. So thanks for joining us again on The Breakout CEO. Be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you enjoy the show, a rating or a review goes a long way. Our mission is to promote the stories of breakout CEOs in scaling SaaS, e-commerce, and tech companies to equip peer CEOs with valuable perspectives and confidence. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of The Breakout CEO. I'm Jeff Holman, and I'll see you next time.